everybody. This is an introduction to a video that was filmed with it was a teaching event that I was a part of, the Happy Knit Summit, and this was actually not the lesson. There was the teacher Q&A segment, and so I've gone through because I actually it sounds bad to be like I like being interviewed, but I like being interviewed because when I'm just making videos with topics that either people have submitted or that I just am coming up with myself, you don't always feel like you're answering. I don't know. It's always fun to get questions from people like on the spot, I think, because people will oftentimes ask questions that I wouldn't have necessarily thought to answer. And so I personally feel like I get a lot of great info from any time I'm in situations like this where I'm really having to answer questions on the spot. So this was a question that is actually a really common one that I don't ever think of. And I know I feel like at least one other video on this before, but I was really happy with my particular answer on this one. And the question was, I want to spin thicker yarn. Basically, help, all my yarn is thin. And the reason I don't personally think about this question that often is because I spin thicker. So I actually had to, when I started spinning, I had to really work on spinning thinner yarn. And so I totally forget that most people, you are not alone. Most people start out spinning very thin, and then the challenge is when they want to spin thicker yarn for texture or just for certain projects or whatever. And so that was one of the questions that came up. So this is a little segment from the teacher Q&A from the Happy Knit Summit that I was a part of, and I was really I don't know, it was like one of those things where like I had just the right amount of coffee, and so I felt like my answer on this one was very good. So I definitely wanted to get it out there versus let it disappear out to nowhere. So without further ado, here is the answer to that question.
Says, I have been spinning on a spinning wheel for about 8 years, and I find I can't get out of a thin spin.
A
Any tips?
thin spin?
Thin spin.
Okay. Well, I can definitely help you with this. Hold on, I have water that I just stuffed on a very dusty surface. Um, okay, most people. So I am a freak that I started spinning on a drop spindle, and I think I was so terrified of it breaking, and I had zero instructions at all. I was zero instructions, and so the first yarn I ever started making was really thick. We joked it was like rope. I mean, it was like that thick. Um, it was so I started out spinning thick and then had to thin out. And from teaching people and just knowing a lot of people in the fiber industry, you are much more normal where you have started thin and are then trying to get thicker. One thing a lot of people do that naturally spin thin, they love chain ply. Chain plying really, because you're taking one long skinny single and then you're making it all wrapped around itself, makes for a thicker yarn out of a thin single, whereas I struggle with chain ply because I have to make my stuff thin, and then by the time I chain ply it, it's like really texture, it's thick. So as far as tips for naturally making your yarn thicker, I know I have videos on this. I'm trying to think what the title would be. What you're going to want to do is, the reason it's ending up thin is because the twist is getting into the fiber in thin little pieces. I'm trying to think the best way to put that. What you're wanting, the goal is to trap the twist in the fiber while it's a larger section of fiber, if that makes sense. Because at the size that, I'm just going to say the size of the strip of your roving or wool source that you're using when the twist enters it is like the size that it's going to be. So if you're drafting it, like if I'm trying to make my thicker stuff thinner, then I would tell somebody to really pre-draft and make it thinner so that the twist is going into a thinner amount. If you're trying to do the opposite and make it thicker, then I'm just going to say a roving braid because that's what I teach off of. You would want to pull your roving braid into thicker sections, maybe more like that, like a finger width, and then really fight the urge to pull on it too much. You're going to want to make your gears, and this is where I'm trying to imagine different spinning wheels. You want to go for a larger gear because the gear on the spinning wheel, the smaller the gear, for each time your foot pushes the pedal in whatever way that your foot is pushing whatever pedal, basically for each rotation of the big wheel on your spinning wheel, if you have a small gear, then you get the flyer heads like really spinning, so you're getting a lot of twist. If you go up a gear, like to your biggest gear that you have, then every time the big wheel goes around, the flyer head's going to be going slower. So that way there's less twist. It's not going to get like kinky. So I would say go up a size or up as big as you need to on gears. I prefer spinning on bigger gears. Like maybe get a glass of wine, like really chill out. And just pull your roving into larger strips. Don't strip it down or draft it down as thin, and then really slow your feet down. And it'll get to where it's easier after you do it. But you're going to want to really let the twist get into the fiber while the fiber is thicker. And then that's how I make yarn. I know I have a bunch of videos. I just filmed one recently on doing like the thick and thin yarn, which is like actually one of my favorite ones to do. And that one, it's a lot of slowing your feet down, kind of wrapping your hand around it, letting it do like a little poof and then thinning it back out. But if you're just trying to do thicker yarn, try to get the twist into the fiber supply without thinning out the fiber supply as much.